I wasted years using the wrong supplies and techniques. Here is what I wish somebody told me at the beginning of my watercolor painting journey. Watercolors are beautiful, but if you find yourself truly struggling, it might not be you, it might be your process. Maybe if you're not familiar with my channel, you want a little bit of a history recap of my journey with watercolors. I have been painting with watercolors, ever since I was little, like us all, but really seriously starting to paint with watercolors around when I was 14 or 15. And I enjoyed it-ish. I wasn't very good at it, but I was just hoping to get better and to improve. And as I kept using watercolors, I kept forcing myself to enjoy them and to use them and to get better at them. And I really didn't see much improvement on my art until one day in 2020, 2021, I don't remember. I just decided I'm over it. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm breaking up with watercolors. I just did not like using them. I just realized I had put in years and years and years of work. I didn't feel like my skills were in any kind of way elevated to what my sketching skills, what my digital painting skills were. And so I just stopped. And I don't know when I decided to pick them back up again. I think Paul Rubin sent me some watercolors. I decided to give it another go years later. And guess what? I love it. And the way that I was able to reframe my relationship with watercolors was to look at it in a completely different way than I had been in the past. So I want to share my enlightenment with you because I really love watercolors right now. And you might be where I used to be, where you really are frustrated with the way that your watercolor paintings look. As always, you see my art style and you can understand where my tips come from. My art is pretty neat and polished, very whimsical and fairy tale like, so that's where all my tips are gonna come from. If you have a different style, different things you like to paint, a different look you're going for, some of these tips might not be for you, but I think that's important to talk to people who might want to have paintings that look more similar to mine than something abstract, because I didn't find videos like mine when I was first starting. Let's start off talking about the right materials. First off, paper. Listen, invest in 100% cotton paper. I was personally a fool to not do this sooner. To be fair to myself, I had bought the Arches paper, the most expensive 100% cotton paper on the market. I think I need to try Arches again because I hated it. I have Arches watercolor paper pads collecting dust right now, and maybe I should try them out and I would love them. But I didn't love them, and so the paper I used every single time I sat down to paint was the Canson XL watercolor paper. And if you are somebody who's been watching for a while, you know my used-to-be love for the Canson XL paper. I preached it from the rafters, understanding that everything I was doing was wrong. It was the perfect storm of every single little thing that was sort of hindering my process coming together and really making me hate watercolors. One of those was not using 100% cotton paper. The reason for this is, as I've been using 100% cotton paper, it soaks up the water, actually. You don't have to sit there and look at the paint drying for 30 minutes, which is something I had to do with the Canson XL. Papers that are not 100% cotton don't absorb water quite as well, and so you're gonna wait a lot longer to be able to have a layer of paint dry so you can paint over that again. To be fair to the Canson XL watercolor paper, there are many effects that you can get with your watercolors with this type of paper that you wouldn't with 100% cotton paper. But I realized it's not for me anymore. I have 6-7 huge 12 by 16 paper pads of this Canson XL watercolor paper that I don't know what to do with. I've been using them for swatches in general, but if you have any ideas of how I can use them creatively, let me know. Secondly is the paper format. Remember I said I used Canson XL watercolor paper pads? I recommend buying watercolor blocks. The reason for this is they will save you the frustration of having to tape down your paper every single time to prevent buckling, and then you're still gonna get buckling even if you tape your paper down. It is a game changer. Personally, I'm not very good at removing my paper from the watercolor blocks, but that being said, watercolor blocks actually make the painting process easy. If you use a combination of 100% cotton paper with watercolor blocks, you'll be golden. You won't have any kind of warping, and the painting process will be a lot more enjoyable than if you're using a loose sheet of watercolor paper that is not 100% cotton and you're using thick, wet washes. It's gonna warp all over the place. Next up, let's talk about your paint. I recommend that you invest in a mid-range set of watercolors, something that is not beginner beginner level, but it's also not for professionals. I personally ride or die by Paul Rubens, and the reason I say this is because they sort of got me back into watercolors. I had completely quit it for several years, and they offered to send me some art supplies to try out. I did, and I loved them, and I'm back into watercolor. So I know I get a lot of supplies from them, but I do also ask them for some supplies. I give honest reviews, and I haven't been paid by them one time. I genuinely love their products. I'm using the Paul Rubens glitter paper and the Paul Rubens Ulan set in this piece, and you can just see the quality of the paints and the paper. Listen, I'm using the 48 color set, but even for me, it can get overwhelming. I don't recommend that you buy such a large set. I definitely recommend you buy 12 to 24 max colors. And truthfully, I'm gonna say I don't really need all the colors at once, but it feels indulgent and fun. So while it's not best practice, it makes me excited to paint having this big old palette with all these colors to choose from. So do as I say, not as I do. I recommend having a more limited color palette. The reasoning for this is that the more colors you have, the more tempted you will be to mix all of the colors, and the more muddy your colors will end up being. So if you want really nice, clear, clean colors, I recommend a smaller set. Quick little intermission. As I was painting this, I got a new booking for my trip to Japan, and I figure I'll tell you a little bit about it. I don't know if you know this, but I do art retreats. I just finished my last art retreat, which was in Crete. We went in May, and it was amazing. It was, I don't know, rivaling my favorite art retreat that I've done so far. It was so beautiful, so relaxing. Crete in Greece is beautiful. The people are so welcoming and so funny and weird. I had a really, 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 really good time in Greece. I love doing these art retreats because they're so inspirational, so good for the soul, and you get to meet people that you would never meet in your life. Like, you just never would run into these people if it wasn't for the retreats, and you make friends for life. I can say that so many of the travelers that have come on the retreats, I consider friends, and when I'm in town, I'll hit them up and be like, hey, you want to hang out? If you were not able to go on my retreat to Greece, you can come to the next one, which is happening in Japan in December. This is going to be my second art retreat in Japan. It's going to be a very similar itinerary to the first, but I looked through it again and I expanded parts that I really wanted to explore more on that retreat and took out some itinerary points where I feel like we could just be drawing during that time. And I'm so excited to go to Japan again. It's unexpectedly been my very favorite country that I've ever traveled to. I didn't really have any expectations for it when I first went. I was sure it was going to be a beautiful country and I love to travel, but Japan blew my expectations out of the water, if that's the correct phrase to use. It's such a beautiful country. It's so safe and so clean and so polite, and everybody's so nice and kind. If you love art and you like my style and just my general vibe, come on one of these art retreats. They're going to make friends for life. You're going to completely recharge your creativity, and you could consider this an early Christmas gift to yourself in December. Right after the retreat, I'm planning on going to Universal, so we can also do that. I'm talking about it a lot because I love them so much. I know you will too. I've had so many travelers be repeat travelers, come on multiple of these retreats, and I've had so many positive reviews from the travelers that they just enjoyed traveling with a guide and an artsy group. So it feels safe and fun. You find people that are similar to you, and you can just explore your creativity, draw with others, learn from others. It's so fun. I'm planning on soon making a video where, I don't know if you ever watched, this is deep cut, but Conan Gray's art tea videos. I used to watch Conan Gray all the time before his music career, and I loved watching the art tea videos because it was like hanging out with a friend. So I figure I'll do a video of that style where I talk about all of the crazy adventures that we've had when traveling on these art retreats, because honestly, there are so many and so many weird ones. There are so many crazy stories that have happened on every single art retreat, and so I really want to do a little video where we can hang out and I tell you all my crazy stories. Okay, let's go back to talking about watercolors. When it comes to brushes, you truthfully only need 2 or 3 brushes. I think you should start out with a cheap set to see what you like, which ones you gravitate towards, and then to upgrade just the ones you actually use. In this piece that I'm painting today, I only used 1 brush and a random clean one just to lift the pigment. That was because I liked the paint that was on my paintbrush and I didn't want to have to clean my brush, so I could have a clean brush to lift the pigment, but I could have easily done it with 1 brush. I really don't think you need that many. I have brushes. I always find myself using the same ones over and over. I'll have a couple of brush sets or just brushes or brush lines that I enjoy linked down below in the description. Lastly, for I guess your accessories, I recommend getting a ceramic palette and a dedicated water cup. Dedicated water cup is important because the amount of drinking glasses that I've used for my paints, then you put them in the dishwasher, then the paint somehow solidifies on the glass and you have to get in there and scrape off the paint to be able to just drink out of the glass again, have a dedicated old mug or glass that will just be your painting cup, that you know is your painting cup. You're not gonna lean over to drink out of it. Now that you have all your supplies before you and you would like to paint, let's talk about how to find your style and not what you think your style should be. First off, think about what general expectation you have of yourself and the art you're going to create. Try out different styles. I thought watercolors had to be this brush stroke focused, expressive medium, and I struggled with the uncertainty that brought. I don't like my art supplies being unpredictable, so I just thought that watercolors in general were not for me. I now love watercolors because I use them so differently. I draw structured sketches and then color inside those lines like a literal coloring book. So this precision helps me create pieces I really love. Instead of having all of these expressive brush strokes and these huge washes of paint and this blooming in my work. Sure, I don't have beautiful blooming in my work, but that's one look, one style amongst so many. So consider for yourself, do you want simple rendering with lots of texture? Do you want realistic rendering? Do you want to paint abstractly or to stylize and simplify your work? For myself, I like it to be a little bit stylized. I like it to be relatively realistic and more so graphic than loose and expressive. The way that I was able to reframe what watercolors meant to me and how I enjoyed them, I can link the video where I had the epiphany down below. But it's that I use the exact same process that I use for my regular pencil sketches. The exact same thought process is what I go into my watercolors with, instead of thinking I need to reframe that completely because I'm using a whole different type of medium. This goes hand in hand, but precision is okay in your work. You don't have to work with large washes of paint. I treat my watercolor paintings almost like I would using colored pencils, using small, careful strokes. It's how I finally started to enjoy the process, and it's different from how I saw a lot of people using watercolors, saying you need to like flow with a brush and have lots of water and lots of paint on your brush and to paint large surfaces at once. All of this stuff, it's just not for me. And there's a lot of beautiful art. That's, what I was trying to go for, but it's just not me. It's not something I enjoy. And so what I recommend for you is to really find what makes you tick, like what makes you really excited. Think about what kind of look you want in your work. Again, do you want it to be textured, realistic, stylized, abstract? Knowing what you're going for in the end is going to help you choose techniques that actually will serve your vision. The next point I have is pretty small but pretty mighty. It's about your mindset. There is a right time and place for discipline and for play. You have to, when you sit down, decide the purpose of your piece. Are you trying to learn a technical skill? Are you trying to learn more about your style? Or are you just painting for fun, not to learn anything but just to relax? These are all going to result in such different pieces that you will paint, and each of these is very important. I will be honest with you. When I want to paint for fun, not to learn anything, just to relax, I go on Pinterest, find specific watercolor pieces on Pinterest. I don't know the artist. I don't know anything about them. I just like what they look like, and I'll kind of copy them. Listen, okay, I'm not ever gonna post that work. I'm not gonna pass it off as my own, but it's so fun. You can learn a lot about yourself, about your own process from playing with watercolors and relaxing in that sense. Don't take this to mean that I recommend you only create work like this and that's what you post online and you don't give credit to the original artist. Maybe if you're feeling stuck, if you wanna draw something that's relaxing, free of any kind of expectations, try something you've never done before. When I'm trying to learn a technical skill, I'm going to go about that a lot differently than when I'm trying to learn more about my own style. The general colors I like to use in my work can be more so tied to my own style than technical skills, but the way that I can combine those colors to have the best contrast, the biggest pop and punch, those may be the technical skills I'm trying to learn. And the way that I would pursue both of these in my work might be different. My last big tip for you is to trust your instincts. When you're learning something new and it's awkward, like you're working out or you're cooking or whatever, and you keep at it and you get better with practice and it stops being awkward. Well, if you feel like you should be getting better and you're not, trust your instincts and then look at your process. Something might need to be changed. I didn't take this advice and I worked with large washes for so many years, every single time frustrated at the results, but I thought that it was me, that I didn't mesh well with watercolors. Turns out it was the technique that was not for me. But I forced myself to try to learn it and to try to adapt to it for so long. Truthfully, it's dramatic to say, but I created like a hateful relationship with watercolors because it never worked out. And I quite literally broke up with watercolors watercolors for several years until I was able to come back to them and reframe the way that I thought of them. So if you are just constantly frustrated, if you don't see improvements in your work in the way that you think you should be seeing them, maybe you're like me and you use pencils and watercolors. And with pencils, you see those improvements, and with watercolors, you don't. Take a step back and think about what can change in your process, what makes you frustrated, because it might be your techniques and not the medium itself. I think it's really funny that I'm making this video because there was a time when I genuinely thought I would never once look in the direction of watercolors again. And on my first art retreat when we went to France, I had a lot of the travelers ask me if I could talk about watercolors and how to use watercolors, and I just said I don't like watercolors, so I can't tell you how to use them properly because I don't like working with them. And it's so funny because I've had repeat travelers from those trips who went to France with me and then went to Japan with me and then that just came to Crete with me. It's funny to see them over the years and they're like, remember when you said you didn't like watercolors and now you love them? It's really funny that something can change so greatly over just a couple of months, but it's really exciting too. I hope this was helpful for you. Maybe this can at very least inspire you to try your hand at creating something today, whether with watercolors or any other medium, and that you just are inspired to create art and to look at it differently, to not be frustrated with it, because art is amazing. It's so healing for mind, body, soul. I mean, I'm being funny by being enlightened, you know, but it's good to have this kind of enlightenment about your own process and your techniques. For it to finally click, your really, really satisfying ASMR click. If this resonated with you, please give me a little bit of a like. Comment if you have a favorite watercolor tip, if there's something that you yourself have learned about yourself or your process that you really want to share, and subscribe for more so you don't miss out on my next videos. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.